Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview, and our special segment, Coffee on Sunday. If there is one home in Delhi which always keeps its doors open, it is Union Minister Hardeep Puri's. His wife Lakshmi runs it like a dream. Formerly Foreign Service officers, both Lakshmi and Hardeep have had the best of both the worlds, the Indian Foreign Service and politics. Now, while Hardeep juggles between two portfolios, his wife Lakshmi leads a laid-back life following her decision to quit the service after her husband joined politics. Today, we have the made-for-each-other couple, Hardeep and Lakshmi Puri, in this edition of Coffee on Sunday. Welcome to the show, Hardeep and Lakshmi Puri, and thank you for being here with us.
Pleasure.
Let me begin with a political question. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of who won and who lost, let me ask you, how will the 2023 elections impact the general elections in 2024?
The 2023 elections, in terms of timing, were sequentially a few months before the 2024 election. But in turn, they come at a very interesting juncture when two models are being tested in the political system. One of these models, which the Honorable Prime Minister exemplifies, is to concentrate, to focus, to emphasize development. Now, if you are able to take the fruits of development to those sections of society which are the most vulnerable, then you have demonstrated that good governance is good politics. End of the day, I think the Modi brand, what do I call the Modi brand? A Modi brand which looks at converting women, 2 crore Lakhpati Didi, Namo drone Yojana, Didi drone Yojana. The overall emphasis on movement from women-centered development to women-led development, the reservation of seats. I mean, I'm just picking and choosing. I think 2024, therefore, is, as far as I'm concerned, will be a watershed election. I had predicted before 2014 that we will get, there used to be that famous quip around 272. I said, no, we'll be way beyond that. In 2019, I said, look, we'll be way beyond that, and we got into this 300 past. This time it will be 15-20% higher because that realization is actually coming. I think one of the slight doubts is that when people get a benefit, do they know where it has come from? Something goes into your bank account on account of some scheme, or if you are, let's say, a beneficiary and a state chief minister puts his photograph on it instead of this thing, I think that corrective will be required. If you are already a $4 trillion economy going on to $5 trillion and $10 trillion, that is what matters the most, because that's the transformation in the country.
You spoke about the Modi brand, and let me quote you. You said, if you want to run India, there is no other way than the Modi way, which many feel is kind of dictatorial.
Well, most of the criticism, I think, is emanating from those who have had two or three distinguishing features about their own position. One is Parivarvad, whether it's a Congress, whether it is the Samajwadi Party, whether it is the BRS. I don't want to go into greater details. The Modi way means that you have a cadre-based party which rewards people on merit. So now to whether it is dictatorial or not. In India, more than anywhere else, if you have to get work done, I'm afraid with my 39 years of experience in the civil service, you have to...
Crack the whip.
No, cracking the whip is an expression in the English language. I would say something else. You have to let it be known that you mean business. And I think the Modi brand says, yes, we mean business. We roll out schemes. For the first time in our history, you have projects being executed with clockwork precision. You've seen Kartavya Path, New Parliament, Bharat Mandapam and Yashobhumi. Tell me which other period in Indian history has this kind of a record.
While I agree that a lot of good work has been done, why do certain sections of the society live in fear, and why are some institutions like the press under attack?
I don't know whether they live in fear or whether they want to live in fear. You will also agree that there were certain sections of the press, prominent individuals, I'm not saying the press as the fourth estate together, who became power brokers. And I think that's something that the Prime Minister's cracked the whip on. But for anyone to use either or any profession to do power broking or, if I may be allowed to use the term, become a dalal, I'm sure that that category of people exists everywhere.
On the inauguration of the new building, you had given examples of Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi inaugurating the Vidhan Sabhas in Karnataka and Maharashtra respectively. For one, do two wrongs make a right? And second, since when has the BJP started following the Congress? If anything, they want to erase everything and the entire legacy of the Congress.
Kumkum, I'm not so sure that one should, and especially somebody like you, should take that position. Nobody wants to erase anybody's memory. I mean, if you leave where we are sitting now and go to the airport, you'll have to cross 6 places which have family names on it. All right? Before you reach the Indira Gandhi International Airport, you'll be going past Jawaharlal Nehru University, you'll be going to X, Y, all bearing name. Our schemes, essentially a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. It's on the institution. The ease with which criticism is leveled against us. If you said, you use the word dictatorial, I think. He must be the most vilified and abused dictator when it comes from the opposition. They're not coming from the people. Look at the kind of language they've used. If this were indeed so, you would have much stronger laws in place for defamation and other things. Today, social media has stepped in. Social media is also not regulated. Now on social media, anybody can put anything out and not fear this thing. So you will have a situation where all kinds of things are being said. But I get worried when responsible people who should know better lap that up and complete lies are peddled.
At a personal level, you are the longest serving housing minister, 6+ years. How does it feel?
I think there are many people who served as ministers much longer. It so happens that I've been the longest serving housing and urban affairs minister.
Sure.
2 things. One is that I was inducted into the Council of Ministers at a point when all the central schemes of the Honorable Prime Minister were being they had just been introduced in June 2015. So I had the privilege of working with those. Those schemes are doing exceptionally well now. But much more needs to be done. Look, our urban population was 17% in 1947. Today, our urban population should be 35% or so. Today, you're looking at the 400 and 450 million people living in urban spaces, which might go up to 600 million in 2030 or even more. So, if anybody tells me that urbanization doesn't require full-time attention, it does. The credit goes entirely to the Prime Minister, because he saw in the challenges of urbanization an opportunity, and he was able to, if I'm able to meet his expectations at least halfway, then that's a great privilege.
Lakshmi, let me get you in at this point. considering the controversies that have, for instance, surrounded the Central Vista project, don't you think it's a thankless job that your husband is doing?
Not at all. I think he, given his makeup, the way he is made, he rises to challenges. He loves to tackle the more difficult, issues. But most of all, he gets the most satisfaction when he is able, against all odds, to make a difference. Swachhata, it's such a fundamental need for a country like India to have this as a people's movement. And as diplomats, we used to realize this when we were traveling around. But our forgetting our civilizational value that we put on cleanliness, somehow we had lost that value. We are now reclaiming it. And that's such a wonderful cause to really keep you going against all odds and building infrastructure for a new India. It is again another huge enterprise, and to have the privilege of delivering on that for posterity, I think it's an amazing portfolio to have and a mission to deliver.
You never had sleepless nights.
Well, he does, and particularly during COVID times, some of these projects came under particular fire. And then, of course, there are the naysayers and there are those who would have liked to do it but didn't do it. So there is all of that. And I think in some ways, he also likes the battles. Shubh karman to kabhu na daro, that philosophy.
I don't want to intervene, but after we get the census very soon and you get the delimitation, Kumkum, you'll have something like 30%, 35% more people having to sit in the Lok Sabha. Where would you have fitted them? As it is, there was no place to sit. So it's also an imperative. But this is the difference between the Congress party and the strange statements we make. When you get the new parliament, just because it was made by the other party and by somebody who you don't like for whatever reasons, as green with envy, whatever it is. But what I'd like to really hear on this parliament is, what is the impression of those who go there? And I tell you something, the kind of reactions that I get, they are not only heartwarming, but they are genuinely, appreciative that you've captured civilizational India. Kartavya Path has what? A footfall over a weekend of 150,000 people, 70,000 on any ordinary day, even when the weather is not nice. So look, you're creating public spaces. Bharat Mandapam, again, it's a world-class conference center, as the G20 presidency events showed. Yasho Bhumi, I mean, it's a class apart.
No, point well taken about the good work. Why is then, and let me ask you this objectively, this negative perception? Can or should the government do something to ward off that?
Look, you want me, my personal view? My personal view is that if somebody is hell-bent on making asinine statements, of distorting facts, I personally, and that's my DNA, I would tell them, give them a long rope. When they use that rope to do whatever they want with it. Today, how can you be? I can be against you. I can be against the political ideology that you represent. But how can you run down your country? You have some parts of these people, the minute they step out, for whatever reason, I don't know why they go out so often or whatever, the minute they go out, see a foreign audience, they start criticizing India. That is the India which has given birth to you. That is the India which has nurtured you. That is the India today which the whole world is looking at, and you just want to run them down. Why is the negative perception? These are guys who are looking for that. And if you look at the spokespersons of the that particular party, they are wanting to show that India is a horrible place. Its country's got a party which is, this will happen, that will happen. Arey bhai, look into the mirror. You'll get the story. I mean, what has been done in the last 9 years in terms of development hasn't been done for 70 years. This is a different ballgame.
Lakshmi, let me ask you, as a citizen, do you agree that one, there is a negative perception, and second, what can the government to which your husband belongs do about it, to do away with it?
Well, let me say that there is a negative perception in a certain section of the polity, and that is part of the democratic jostling that happens. But even, I came back to India after about 18 years being outside and in the UN and so on. And when I came back, one of the things I noticed was that the level of the oppositional discourse has never been so low. To some extent, negativity is the calling of the opposition in a democracy, because they have to show that the ruling system is not delivering or is doing wrong or whatever. But the level to which they go, and that also speaks to your earlier question, there were some diplomats that I was talking to, and then, I said, I've never seen in any country the freedom to abuse as much as it is being done now. So, yes, so that it's not a generalized negativity, it is the negativity of a certain section. Now, the question is, what can the government do? And I think there are two things that you have to do. You have to respond every time and clarify, and so to neutralize that. And the second thing, which I think they are doing quite effectively, is to put out the correct narrative and to drive a positive narrative despite this negativity. In this stream of negativity, send out an ocean of positivity and the positive narrative where India is going. And I think that's what will prevail.
I think if I may just come in there, there's a fundamental difference between India and many other countries in the world which matter. Here you have complete democracy. By complete democracy, I mean you can actually make a statement and hope to get away with it. But that complete democracy is now enacting certain safeguards. So in the democratic process, during a debate, you can say anything you like. But if you go a step further and you start, let's say, vilifying the institutions, when you start undermining things which are, sacrosanct. But the fact of the matter is, you talk about authoritarianism, a democratically elected prime minister, and you don't think that some restraint is called for there because the person has come from the people. That's one. Second issue, again, I am not part of the mainstream. I think you should deal with dissent firmly. You disagree with my opinion, be my guest. The kind of vilification that took place in a particular state in the Northeast, I mean, in small circles, it's not my job to say, listen, guys, there is a problem here. The problem here is it may be an ethnic issue. There may be a problem from across the border. Please, it has to be dealt with in a mature manner. Okay? I rewind. Kashmir, J&K. Look, the insurgency was not homegrown. I'm being blunt on that. If you didn't have inspiration from across the border, many of these things wouldn't happen. The particular country may be collapsing, but that doesn't prevent them from trying to destabilize some part. But that ability to destabilize will not succeed. It's a stronger India. Secondly, it's an India which is capable of taking action in order to safeguard its own interests. I am afraid, again, I'm a total Democrat, I believe in freedom of speech. There's only one instance in our history when civil liberties have been curtailed, and that was during June 1975 during the emergency. And I find it hilarious that this talk about less democracy coming from those which reveled in the imposition of the emergency.
But on the point which Lakshmi made about the government needing to clarify, where I think there are gaps.
That's an integrated feature of functioning in a democracy. I mean, I'll get you. Somebody puts out a tweet trolling me in the morning. All right. Vicious. You get vicious stuff thrown at you. I've developed a thick skin. But if somebody makes an outlandish claim, you have no choice but to respond to it. But यहाँ पे एक new trend I'm seeing in the political discourse, I think Lakshmi was too polite to tell you that, कि सरेआम झूठ बोलते हैं. सरेआम झूठ बोलते हैं. Then we are participating in a democracy. You can take the criticism, please. What Lakshmi is saying is, you have to respond to it. But she's talking about the normal narrative. But most of the narratives are not normal. Most of the narratives are accusatory, they are confrontational, and they are put out with a view, Kumkumji, to put you down. That is what I object to.
Let me substitute the word country with government.
Yeah.
And the perception, again I underline the word perception, is anyone who goes against the government goes for him or her.
I don't agree with that. If anyone goes against the government on something which affects, see, you go after the party. I got so many people abusing us. Come to the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, see the kind of things that are said, and look at our responses. Some of us give very robust responses, and I'm glad. You say something about an individual. Okay, this act was not thought through. This piece of legislation requires more consideration. That's part of the democratic process. But you personally attack the individual, calling him, if you compile the kinds of things you said, government doesn't go after them. There are parts of the system which go after them. Government doesn't have any legislative department which says that if Hardeep Puri is abused to do, then government will leave me to my own devices. But yes, I'm part of the ecosystem. I have friends, and equally, if somebody whom I respect, no matter whether he or she is an equal or my boss, somebody attacks somebody whom I respect, who I think is doing a great job for the country, sure, I will go after them. When you come to the conclusion that the man has just an agenda, then you say, all right, now let's deal with you. That's when they come, oh, government is very sensitive to criticism. If you attack the government, they come after you. Let's take it to another level. You commit an act of omission or commission which involves a financial issue. What? Just because you are in the opposition, you should be free from the purview of scrutiny by whichever agency. A particular brand of politics which plays on, or which plays the victim card, I think people will catch on. People will also, they are very mature.
Let me ask both of you, from diplomacy to politics, did you ever think it would happen? And what has politics taken away from you?
Yeah, please.
Begin by saying that Hardeep was always interested in politics. He cut his teeth when he was in college. I know that even as a diplomat in the Foreign Service, he was always bristling, he was always uneasy. Shall I say, he always wanted to join politics and somehow felt that was his true calling.
Did you agree or disagree?
So I think I held him back. I plead guilty because over the years, I think being together, being part of a very coveted service and serving and representing India abroad, that was in itself a glory. And both of us, of course, revelled in it. But there were times when he said he wanted to do law, and then he would, become a lawyer and then join politics. So this went on for years. And I think his political skills have always been very strong, even within diplomacy, because I think diplomacy teaches you many things, but also if you have political skills, it comes in very handy and is very, it gives you an edge. So I think that combination was always at play with Hardeep Singh Puri. And then when the first opportunity came, I think he seized it, and I don't think he ever regrets.
Seems to be enjoying it. immensely.
Absolutely. In between the travel and the engagements, political engagements, but I think on the whole, it gives him tremendous, in many ways, almost a spiritual energy.
I think that deserves a response. She's not held me back. She's been totally supportive. And I say that in every respect. Yes, I think if you've been married and you so and so, you're also conscious of the what constitutes best interest and what constitutes, if I may be allowed to say, sane thinking. But you can't suddenly get up after spending 20 years and say, I'm leaving. I think that would have been foolhardy. Frankly, in 2009, my contesting the election, when I still had 4 years to go, and my best political, not my best civil service time came then, when you are presiding over the Security Council in the UN, when you are chairing the counter-terrorism committee. So I think she was totally right on that. She was not particularly happy. I think it's also mutually reinforcing. I think I respect the fact that she's academically brighter, but more than that, I respect the fact that she's a very active thinking person. What she was saying earlier about my routine, yes, I work about 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, but that I think is not special to me. If you talk to anyone in Mr. Modi's team, they're probably doing the same thing. And there is, Kumkum, a fundamental difference between a Modi minister and a Congress minister. A Modi minister is like a CEO of a large enterprise, chief operating officer, whereas a Congress minister was literally lal batti, trappings, hundreds of guys hanging around.
So, on keeping an open house, which all of us are aware of, you run a dream home. Is it because your husband is very demanding?
I don't know whether I run a dream home.
I can vouch for that. So,
Well, I think both of us are house proud. We love to collect, have beautiful objets d'art around us, and particularly Indian crafts. And of course, hospitality has been part of our DNA on both sides.
on pleading guilty, Lakshmi pleads guilty. Do you have a conscience burden that she had to quit the service because of your interest in politics?
Little bit, yeah. I feel that she was in the prime of her career when I joined the Council of Ministers. She was in the prime. She was an ASG. I mean, it was only a question of time. She would have been Under Secretary General, and she was, professionally very highly regarded. And lo and behold, I joined the Council of Ministers. When she found out, she did not take even a minute, but I am very happy now because she utilized that time. She switched from her professional and she has decided to do some serious writing. Now that I think makes up, and to that extent it diminishes my sense of, it's not guilt, it's just you say, "Arey bhai, no, you could have easily gone on, maybe you would have managed." No, I wouldn't have been able to manage. With the kind of routine I need.
I would like to relieve him of any guilt, if any. Actually, I don't regret at all. I think I did my best. I'm satisfied that I built up the first ever global organization for promoting gender equality and women's empowerment for 7 years when I was in New York with the UN. Of course, one can always, there are these what ifs. What if I had stayed on, what would have happened? But I'm not into that game at all. I'm very happy that I came back. And also, I think it was time that I paid my dues as his soulmate, as his wife, and supported him in what was and is very challenging, including being there by his side to be just a sounding board sometimes. That role I'm very happy to play, and I don't have any regrets.
Lakshmi, as someone who has handled women's issues during several of your assignments, The BJP government introducing the Women's Reservation Bill, isn't it kind of dangling a carrot, given that it's linked to the delimitation exercise and in one sense years and years away?
Let me just begin by reminding all of us, and as an activist and a gender equality advocate, and an advocate for a measure like this, which under the International Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, constitutes what is called a temporary special measure to bring about de facto equality. When you have, of course, the constitution and you are assured de jure equality, I think when you take a measure like this, after 27 years of struggle, I don't think one should, what shall I say, look a gift horse in the mouth so easily. Of course, we have, some way to go, but it is a breakthrough. This is just the first step. And we have to move from that to preparing the ground for women to actually take advantage of this reservation bill. And that requires measures to be taken on the demand side, preparing the women's leadership, preparing them to build constituencies, to networking, building on and also skilling up for taking up that role, and preparing also on the supply side, the institutions, whether it is the parliament and the state assemblies, but most importantly the political parties, to change from that patriarchal mode to becoming more supportive of equal participation of women in the political decision making.
You see, the Congress party had an opportunity to do it.
No, I would protest at that question.
Yeah,
Yes, it had to come.
It had to
It
come.
must
I agree. But let me tell you, Congress party brought the thing. For so many years it was dangling, came into the Rajya Sabha, then they wouldn't move on it. So, if you are committed and you have the power now, why are you gambling on it to bring it at a time when you may not have the power?
Let me end on your love story. Where did it begin? The first date? Who proposed? The first dinner? The first gift?
Well, we met in Mussoorie whilst we were under training as IFS probationers in the foundational course.
Love at first sight?
I wouldn't say. In fact, we had a fight at first sight, and then from there, sparks flew, and somehow, we got attracted to each other, and before we knew, we had by around November decided that we will get married, and we were all of 22, but it was a two states story, also Hindu and Sikh, and my being a working person, so we encountered quite a lot of opposition, but I think we overcame all of that and we stayed the course.
You're not saying anything.
No, I am. When she said we had a fight, no, I think it was a disagreement on things, and those disagreements are there even now. Let's start it. I don't think any healthy, long-lasting, and marriage is an adjustment. There are people. I have sometimes a different way of looking at things, and you have. I mean, you form your opinions based on your experience. And one thing that has characterized our life together is, I've never been asked to change my opinion. Look, the first reaction of parents on both sides was not welcoming. Say, ye kya ho gaya suddenly? Well, look, there are challenges, etc. But for heaven's sake, I mean, it's an absolutely correct decision and a worthwhile one.
Is he a gift-buying husband?
Oh, yes.
Yes, he is very generous. Khule dil ka.
So,
Has politics taken out the romance?
Not at all.
but I want to make a confession in conclusion. I live off her. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. I mean, she is in terms of economic standing. That's why I say I don't need to work. I can retire. Between her UN, whatever you call it, pension and her rent income from the others, I would need to work.
Lakshmi and Hardeep Puri, on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking all the questions.
Thank you.